Early this past spring, I planted a number of new fruit trees here on my property. I thought I would just do a review. Some of them have done well, some have done okay, and unfortunately some have just not made it. I wanted to show you this tree that I planted out here at the front of the prairie. I mean, you can see it, basically this stem that's right there. That's a small Macintosh apple tree that unfortunately did not make it. It actually never showed any signs of surviving last winter's deep freeze, where we had temperatures down to minus 30 degrees. And I actually think that it failed to survive well before we even planted it this past spring. It's just that I had hoped that the buds would actually break on that when it gave us some leaves, and it didn't. This here is the second tree that was very disappointing. This is a Golden Grimes apple tree. Like the Macintosh that I just showed you, this was a tree that I received in the spring of 2013 as a bench graft. That means a freshly grafted scion onto a rootstock that was mailed, having just been grafted, bare root. I grew them through the season out of the ground in buckets to about a height of 4.5 feet each, and then made the mistake last winter of leaving them out of the ground in what was a very cold winter, which I think killed both trees. I think these trees were both dead before they even got into the ground, because neither of them showed any kind of leaf through the course of the season. So I knew these were gone actually within the first couple months of this past spring. So a mistake, taking a bench graft and leaving it outside in a particularly cold winter is asking for your young trees out of the ground to be killed by the cold. The temperature went down to minus 30 this past winter. This one here is our Seckel pear tree that was planted this past spring. This was not a bench graft from last year that I grew through the year. This was a mail order bare root tree that came in this past spring, and I put it in the ground, and it's actually done quite well. I'm hoping next year we actually see significant growth, and I'm going to do a little bit of pruning this winter. I'm looking forward to this tree's tasty sugar pears in the years to come. This one is a seedling rootstock, so it's going to be a few years before I actually see the fruit. This plant with the light colored leaves there in the center of the picture is a mulberry tree that I planted this past spring. And as you can see, we actually have some young growth there coming off the side of what was the original trunk of the tree there. So this is an example of a tree that actually did not do substantial growth this year, but seems to have survived its first season and demonstrate some growth. I'm looking forward to seeing it do some significant growth next year. Here are two other fruit trees that I planted this past spring, both bare mail order trees that were planted right into the ground after they arrived through the mail. One is this pear here, which is Moonglow, and the other is this apple tree, which is the snow apple, or fameuse. Both these fruit trees are being planted here next to my grapes with guide wires adjacent to them so that I can create espalier fruit trees. And as I've mentioned before, if it works out, I might even try and use the espaliers as my breeding ground for some new varieties, but we'll see if we can pull that off. I'm still learning a lot about apple trees. So we had significant growth this past season from these newly planted trees, and I'm going to wait until next year after they put a little bit more growth on themselves to actually pull their branches down along these guide wires to create the espaliers. The last tree I planted this past spring that I wanted to show you is the old Greengage that I put in the ground here just near my pioneer fence. And as you can see, it's the plant that has the white tree protection wrapped around its base. I also have it surrounded by deer netting here to keep the deer away from it until it's big enough. This was delivered a little bit early, and so I had to struggle with extreme cold outside and a bare root tree. I managed to get it in the ground within a few weeks, and it's done reasonably well, although it hasn't sprouted upright the way I had hoped. Some of the branches died, but then we have significant growth on some of the other secondary branches, and I'm hoping that over the next 2 years it recovers nicely and begins to send up a nice strong central branch. So this is my old Greengage, which had an outcome that was plus or minus related to weather and timing of the delivery of the bare root tree.